So I do have a question for you, and it revolves around leadership to get us kind of started off here. And I think that leadership is very fundamental no matter where you're at. Across the spectrum. Stop smiling at me as I ask this question.
Sounds.
Yeah, it's like
This is not this doesn't feel like an icebreaker right now.
No, it's not.
Okay.
No, because as you said,
We
prior
already broke
to
the
this,
ice? Okay.
we know each other well enough that there needs to be no ice. Like have you ever played the Penguin Icebreaker game?
Yeah, I have children, Logan.
Okay, well,
You
we
know
were going to
this.
get into this.
Yeah.
But, okay, so you have, a simple yes would have done.
Yeah.
But rude. Anyways, leadership is foundational to who we are in the military, especially as officers, even to other people. And so if you had to choose, like, a scenario, if you will, and the scenario is this. You get to either be a dictator's right-hand man, like he will be dictator of a country. Think like third world country, like not strong centralized government, where you can rise through the ranks and you would be this dictator's right-hand man for years. And you don't know when it's going to end, but it's going to end and it's going to be tragic. Or you get to be like a mid-level person in this country of rising and falling dictators. But since you're mid-level company commander, maybe field grade officer, like they kind of just let you keep kind of going because your loyalty is just whoever's in charge. Would you rather kind of ride out that to that sunset, or would you rather kind of be like, well, like I'm in charge when he's not around or they're not around, but when they're around, like you're definitely not in charge?
Yeah, I'd rather be like that. I'm in charge when he's not around.
You'd rather be that middle
Yeah,
person? Why?
absolutely.
Please, you have to elaborate.
I mean, I don't want a tragic ending. Like you just told me that I could be
You
this
will.
person's right-hand man and then tragically fall.
I mean, most dictators do tragically fall at some point.
I'd much rather just chug along.
And just kind of keep
and
going.
Be happy.
Just make sure maintenance is good. Like
yeah,
just
and then
maintain.
maybe you could like influence. That like.
Oh, see, now that's the thing. That's not how dictatorships work. See, this is the problem with asking Americans.
If I'm not here, like I could start to influence.
Yeah, see,
that's
that's the problem with America. We think we could just kind of make everything like our own experience. That's not.
I don't want it to be.
That's not the world.
I want it to make it like a better experience because you're my buddy and you're with me in the trenches at this mid-grade level.
I would probably be a mid-grade person too. I think, and then we would. But that influence stops the minute Dictator X shows up because he's like, "What is this?
Yeah, but
why are people happy here?"
People like you and I start to influence Dictator X.
No, that's not how that works.
It does, though.
Because Dictator X is power hungry, and he sees you as a threat.
He's seeing talent. No.
And so if he sees no. This is the problem. He sees you as a threat, and that's why you're just middle of the road. And you have to kind of dial it back a bit and be like, okay, well, don't want my head chopped off today.
Yeah, I mean, but maybe like I tragically ended as a mid-road guy too, so I
just the tragic. Well, I tried to influence what I could.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's telling. I thought you would have for sure been kind of like the right-hand man sort of person where like you just like, let's ride this out and let's, because that's where the influence is.
No,
well, but either way, you're just in a crappy position. I'm not asking you to condone. Just asking to see like where your mind's at.
The people that are around me that could potentially like still be good people. Like dictator to me tells me like you ain't a good person. And like
that's true.
I'm not gonna,
but you're serving that person.
Sure, because I have to. So, but that means that everyone to my right and left at the mid-grade side, right, also has to. But there are probably some good folks out there, and like those are the people that I want to find.
There are always good folks, and like I say, we love the person, and we always hope the best for the person.
Yeah. So no, I don't want to hang out with a bad person that I know is just bad. No, that sounds terrible.
I have a joke, but I can't say it.
Okay.
And so I'll save it till afterwards, and I'll share with what I was going to say. So we'll leave that as a cliffhanger.
Okay.
But so as we also talked about prior to this, before as we get to know each other a little bit more, is your experiences here in Fort Riley have been not the standard sort of kind of like career path. So most people come here, they maybe do a division level job, and then they go down and do some KD time. Whether that's for yourself, that's as an MI officer, brigade S2 time. Maybe I know there's other positions that you could do that was probably capture KD as well. But you did not kind of have that route. You kind of almost had like a reverse card played on you. Can you elaborate on kind of like when you got to Riley, like what you started out as, and then the kind of like the scenario you built for yourself?
Sure. So I arrived at Fort Riley, and to caveat, did not want to come to Fort Riley.
Okay, we'll bleep that out.
But I think it's important because
It
I
is.
think it shows that like over my tenure, like how much that has changed and like how grateful I am for Fort Riley. So I think it's important that I
Because it's been
say
4 years now.
it has been 3. I'm coming up on my 3rd year. So this
Okay,
summer,
that's
like I've
right.
done my 3. Yep. So I arrived here. Maybe a little disgruntled, also knowing that like I was going to deploy pretty quickly,
Yep.
and at the time I had a 2 and a 4-year-old, so
It's tough.
mama vibes were crushed. And I went to the G2, so my division position, and played G2 operations. So I was the operations officer for the G2 section.
That's so fun.
Yeah, I mean, not the like glorified position, definitely not KD. And I kind of just assumed I would arrive, do my year, try to survive, and really fight to go into a BCT over the other brigades. So that was kind of my
No
mindset.
offense to the other brigades.
None, just competitive wise for
Yeah.
MI, like it's a stronger profile for you to go
Sure.
into an ABCT over going to a Combat Aviation Brigade or the DSB.
It's fair.
And I think a lot of times as women, this is probably a very generic comment, but like we kind of get tracked and trended to go towards a DSB or a cab. So it was really in me that I was like, no, I want the hard job. I want to go to an ABCT.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm going to work hard on division staff. So I showed up into Europe, and one of the first people I met was Chris Zaczek. And he was like, hey, are you the new G2 plans officer? And I was like, absolutely not. No, I'm not.
The opposite of that.
Yeah, and I think I crushed his soul a little bit. And what I realized is that, like, plans probably needed some help. So I kind of just started to find ways that I could insert myself in other areas. Like G2 operations, not that sexy, let me tell you. And so I tried to find...
Let's just G2 at all is not
Yeah,
that.
no, not. I mean,
Yeah.
in Europe, a little bit more unique, right? Because there was actually a mission going on.
Yeah.
There was real live
We can keep
intel,
pretending there's places where you are more of a,
an
sexy
asset.
vibe.
Yeah. But like it wasn't like SAGU vibes, right?
Yeah.
It was just like we were kind of on the outskirts. And the operations side is really more of like, do you understand the blue side of like things so that you can accurately depict like the red, right? So it wasn't anything great and wonderful. So I just tried to find ways to be better and like support in other areas. And I think as an intel officer, like if you don't do that, you don't survive. And at least that's what I've learned through my career. Went to the gym a lot. Spent a lot of time.
That's great.
In the gym, right? A lot of mornings, a lot of 05 a.m. workouts.
Typical field grade officer behavior right there.
And then I got given a special project, and it was the LPD series for the CG. So the G2 at the time was like, hey, here's this binder full of stuff. The CG hates it.
It's a great start.
Fix it. And I was like, okay. And I was like, this is going to be your project, your special project. And I was like, okay. So fast forward, I was requested to come sit down with the CG at the time to talk about the leadership development project and like what his program looked like and how he wanted it structured. And I was like, okay. So I went and met, did my notes, turned in a product. And then
sounds exhilarating.
Yeah, this kind of.
I feel like there's a lot more in the background there that you're not sharing.
I mean, not really.
Because like you're talking like CG level things here, and
Yeah.
like usually they're not like, what is this? Oh, cool.
Yeah, so I think ultimately I was able to take what the man said and do exactly that, which is wild.
Wildly uncommon.
But I will tell you that I've learned through my time that like when a senior officer says, this is what I want, they're not looking for like the Jess Kitchell, like, but sir, what you're really looking for is this. No, like they don't. They know exactly what they want because that's why they've made it to that point in their career.
Theoretically.
And a lot of people don't catch that vibe. Like they want to be the one that's like, no, what you really said
and there's a tragic
was
ending.
this. Yeah, and like it doesn't work out well. So what I found was I did exactly what he asked me to do. I made a silly, nice PowerPoint slide and I wrote an order. And
Wow.
that
That is typical feel great material right
yeah,
there.
right there, like PowerPoint, made a beautiful
Yeah.
PowerPoint slide. So, and that I think has led into me being asked to be the CG's executive officer.
Which is, I would imagine, is a terrible job to have, like mentally at first, because you're like, that is just a lot. It's busy, rewarding as all get out. Like I'm sure, like there's obviously the light at the end of the tunnel that you can see. Like that's got to be a rewarding experience. Like that's kind of like more strategic level, like thinking that I've never been a part of before. Maybe you have been, or maybe you haven't been at that time. But like compared to where you were, like everybody thinks that everybody on division just has like, oh, you're always like doing this, like no, we're just sometimes just nugging out working products and trying to make sure we're doing the right things, like for supporting units a lot. But to always be switched on to like and right there next to the person that's commanding the division, and not just like commanding the division down, but also like reaching out to like get things and resources for the division. What's that? I guess like what was your kind of thoughts?
So I'll be completely honest. I thought it was a joke. And I'll explain. So at the time, like his current XO was a captain. And
Yeah.
it was a pre-command captain. So
Oh
I
wow.
was like, "You want me to take a pre-command captain's position?" Like I
Right.
didn't know
Right.
what a
Yeah.
CG's XO was, nor did I think it was a real thing. So I actually like called my brother, who also serves in the United States Army, and I was like, "Hey, is this a real gig?" And he was like, "Oh yeah, like every division commander has a major, and typically they're KD complete, and like you should absolutely do it if he's asking you to." And I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, I guess then I will say yes." And then, thought through like, okay, what does this mean for my tenure and timeline, right? Because I was
Yeah, you got to.
really gung ho about getting into KD.
Yeah, and out of Fort Riley.
And yeah, I mean, just like get my KD done and move and do something cool and broadening. And so I was like, well, that'll maybe take me, another year here that I wasn't expecting to do. How does that impact like my family? But yeah, back to like once I got through all that in my head and said yes, and was able to have the privilege to do that job. I mean, it was pretty awesome. My boss was phenomenal. Um, and like, I think that not everyone loves certain leaders in the United States Army, right? Like everyone kind of has like their own perception
Yeah,
of people.
right.
But I will say that like he allowed me to be a forced off a mom. So like I was very hesitant to take the job because I also was going to be geobatting at Fort Riley for a significant amount of time while in that role. And I was like, hey, sir, probably not the person for you. I have two small children. I'm just getting back from this deployment. I'm going to be single momming it. I don't even have daycare set up because I'm not
Right.
like a number one choice for daycare on installations because I'm not dual military. They don't take in consideration geobat anything. It doesn't matter. So it was just like, I was like, I had a lot of problems that I got to deal with, like personally with my own life.
As long as you're good with these
Yeah,
sets of.
probably don't have time to like help you with your problems, right?
Right.
Like, and he was like, no, that's exactly why I want you to do this job. And it was like, I have two small children too. We'll make it work, and you'll do well. And I was like, okay. So that's what I did for almost 16 months. So it was a little bit over a year.
And so before we get to what you did after that, which I think is also super unique, what was like the one thing you kind of learned from the beginning of your time there to the end that you kind of walked away with that was like the most surprising?
Most surprising. I mean, I don't know that I was surprised by anything, to be honest.
You're
like,
just so cool, just a cool cat.
no, I think that you see another layer of the Army. Um, I think it's rewarding in the fact that, like, I was able to work with other senior leaders, right? Like the brigade commanders across the installation, I got to know pretty well. And it was awesome to see that they all care very much for their organization and were like humble, empathetic, authentic leaders. I think, and that's not surprising.
Yeah, but like
like
still.
but maybe it is a little bit because like I think sometimes you get to that echelon,
Mm-hmm.
and as like a major, you realize really quickly that anyone that's I would say a senior leader, like a colonel or above, like can be really petty.
I think
And
we think there's an ego that, like, whether it's there or not, at least in our minds, like, oh, they're a brigade commander. Like, there's probably an ego that got them there, and that we just don't want to cross that line. And like you said, at least the ones that we've had here, been they almost the exact opposite, like of that, and it was like been super caring about their job and really humble in their position as being a commander.
Absolutely. So, like, I guess that would be my biggest surprise.
Yeah.
But, like, it shouldn't be a surprise, right?
Well,
you hope that every leader in the Army, like, exists to do that,
but
right?
not every leader's the
same.
same.
They don't, right?
So,
yeah.
Okay, so then you got to complete that time, and it was great and super rewarding, as you have said, or I've said for you. And then you got to go down and actually do your brigade S2 time and your KD time.
Yes.
And that was super exhilarating.
Yeah.
And it lasted all of
3 months.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not because she got fired.
Yeah.
But what happened?
So I one afternoon working a little bit late,
Should have left early.
Doing a little special, additional project to try to help out my battle buddy, the Brigade XO, and my boss, Colonel Lauer, like awkwardly came to my office, which like I don't think he's ever been. Actually, he said, "I've never been up here," which was like, "Oh, okay, hi, sir." And he just said, "Hey, I've got like a situation, and I'm wondering if you'd be interested in like taking on an XO role in this organization. And I'm working through some things, and just like, how would you feel about that?" And I immediately was like, I'd be honored, and absolutely, I would love that. I would love to do that, and not that I know how to do that by any means.
You never say yes because you know how to do it.
Yeah, not wildly, probably not what I've been trained to do in my professional career. But I felt like I wanted to give it 100%, and I would have done anything Colonel Lauer asked me to do, just because, again, going back to the other comment, like watching him over a year as the CG's XO, I was just super impressed with Colonel Lauer, like just how humble and authentic and kind and like a warfighter and just kind of a goofy guy sometimes.
He's
like
a decent human being.
Right? Yeah. So I was like, I will do anything that you want me to do, sir. Not that I'm going to do it exceptionally well.
Don't have high expectations.
Yeah,
keep them low, and we'll see where we go.
Yeah, if you just need me to show up and like be a presence in the force, like I got you. But I also kind of thought it was going to be like with one inch. Or, right, because like the MICOs, it's not like a tie to it. So I didn't really know like what was going on and where.
And they put you.
Yeah, and then they put me in 3-6 armor.
Which is, usually combat arms dominant positions. We save those for 11 series officers and 19 series officers predominantly because that's the way they're coded. But
says the S1.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so I know a little bit behind the scenes there. I mean, so to me, when I see that, that's very unorthodox, and to me, it's like it's a big deal, right? Like, so we're not asking you to do this because there are, like, to be honest with you, there were 19s and 11s that could have come down and done that job. Now, would it have been turbulent to what they were doing at the time? Yes, especially with the training glide path that we were both on, right? Both Division and 1st Brigade going to NTC. Everybody was kind of entrenched in what they were doing. So, but nonetheless, like turbulent, like that's an important position, a battalion XO job. So to me, being able to pick you, like looking across the brigade and picking you in general, but then an MI officer, because it's just an MI officer.
Yeah, those guys.
Like the way we look at things in the Army, right? We're so, cultured to keeping things like the way it is. That's why we, the infantry branch reveres their Ranger tabs, even if they have great leaders that may not have them. Not to say that they're, like it is a great thing, but they revere that, right? And armor people revere like going to like, doing certain things, right?
Yeah.
So to look across the bow at all this talent that we have here at Fort Riley, which there is a lot, at least to be able to come down and fill that role, and they selected you to do it, which I think speaks to at least a little bit more than just you being an MI officer, right?
I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, I think like ultimately it was a request for like probably more of my personality, right, than if like a talent, like a. We talked about that mid-level like void of like influencing, right? Like, I think Colonel Lauer 366 kind of had a bad rap, like
No.
the year right, like the year I stood with the CG, you know, I watched him counsel like that command team, and like they struggled with gunnery, which you know now I know is a very like
Big deal.
prized,
It's a
yeah,
very big deal.
yeah, it's a big deal, right? So and they just kind of had a lot of victim attitude,
Okay.
like a lot of like woe is me, like we had to shoot gunnery again, like nobody likes us, we're the worst battalion in the whatever, right?
Right.
And I think Colonel Lauer was just like, I need them to like stop with the victim attitude and like understand that they are a force multiplier, and
Yep.
like they are doing great and wonderful things for the United States Army, and like buck up, like let's go. And I think in his head he was like, Jess, you seem like you've got the right like
You're always smiling for
yeah,
some
you got
reason.
the right
Like
like
you.
personality to kind of get in there, but like also like I guess I'm not shy to like make corrections, and
Yeah.
I try to maintain my physical fitness, and you know some things that majors not always like can fail to do in
Right.
our demanding life
Nice,
as
yeah.
a field grade.
Pete, you know, it's such a PT is one of those things that's it's so important that it's like the first thing to go. And to me, I think it shows your internal discipline you have, like just towards your professionalism in the Army. And you know, we're not all like perfect at everything, but there is you know something to say to still put it first. And so I always think it's you know people either say, well, it's dumb, like I'm good at other things, like I don't have to always be good at PT. Like you don't, but it shows an initial self-discipline that if you can do that, because you're right, you're maybe do it on your own because you don't have you kind of let that time go to cover the demands of the job. You know, are you still able to maintain that? And I think that's an important thing.
Yeah, and I think it like also just again like I've learned colonels and above real petty, like real petty, and like those like that 2 minute interaction you have with them.
It's important, yeah.
It's so important, and not because they're bad people, but like they've done this like the assessment game for so long now that like they're gonna peg leaders pretty quickly. I think like the good ones will come back on it if they say like I had the wrong story for you, like
Right.
you're exceptional. But like I truly believe that like your first interactions, like your appearance, your physical fitness, your how you speak, how you maintain like yourself, says a lot at this rank that maybe it didn't as a captain and lieutenant, right? Like
That's why whenever I introduce myself to a senior leader, I say I need multiple 2-minute sessions with you before you make just like kind of write a letter and say just please read this before
you make your first judgment of
please
me.
don't judge me
Yeah.
right away.
Yeah.
All right, so like I said, pretty unique as far as your background, but you also highlighted something that I want to talk about because so far you are our first mom and female officer that we've had to come in, and the dynamic that is. I think it's something. My wife, just full disclosure, I have a wife. She's military as well, and so I get to see that every day. And
We love Nadine much more than Logan, just so everyone, just to make sure it's on the record that Nadine far superior to Logan.
Wow, rude. Also. Correct. But you know, so to be honest, I don't think about like the trials other people go through if there is some in that difference. And so just this sounds so dumb to ask, to be honest with you, but what's your experience as being a female in the Army, and like how was that like you know, like how do you know, do you see anything different? Do you feel anything different? I mean, you kind of touched upon a little bit of being a mom. Like I don't even want to pretend because you know, when it comes down to me and Nadine, like Nadine goes and is like does being a mom first. Like it's pretty wild. Like I don't think that way as like the dad.
I will say like I've had a really great experience being a female in the Army, right? Like, I've never had a bad leader.
Yeah.
Like I've never had a toxic leader. And I've always just like feel like I've never been put in a situation where I was uncomfortable, which, you know, I don't know. Like, I feel like the Army's been a really good spot for me as a woman. I actually feel like some of the things that I've been offered to do, like, maybe I had a leg up because I was a female, and, like, nobody likes to hear that. But, like, intrinsically, like, I think at some point, like, being an outlier, like, can help you in times, especially if you are on par with, like, your peers, right? Your male peers.
Right.
So like my female experience has been great, as a mom, I will say that it's tricky, right? Like there's a innate like feeling that you're just not doing either one of those things well, right? Like I'm not momming well and I'm not jobbing well, and like I just hope that like my like one
Just,
my
man, I
one
really hope these.
nostril like just stays like above the water just enough to like fake the funk on both sides. And I don't think that there's like the when people are God, what's the word? When they're like, hey, just like manage your personal and professional
Yeah,
life and like
it's simple actually.
yeah,
We
and
do it all the time.
I just call right? Like I'm like there is no management of that, right? Like sometimes like you're flowing and like you're rowing real hard for the army because you're like,
Right.
okay, I have to, and like momming is like is here, and then you find the space where you're like, okay, momming's got to come up, so
Mm-hmm.
momming's now the priority. Army, like you're just gonna have to hang tight because I'm going to soccer practice 2 times a week, or I'm going to the parade on
Yeah,
Friday,
because yeah,
or
and it never happens at the same time because you're like, well, hey sir, like I'm gonna go and we got gunnery coming up. We're gonna be out in the field for like 20 to 30 days, so I'm gonna kind of go be mom and they're on board with that. It never happens like that. It's like, nope, you got to do all that time, but when we really needed you, because like now the kids are sick, and now there's all these other external factors happening. It always
100%.
happens like during that 20 to 30 day period that you're in the field, and you're like, like, and you don't want to. This is probably going to sound worse than I mean it. Like you don't want to over prioritize your family at the because like you still have this job, and it
Yeah.
sounds like you're over prioritizing your family, but you're no, it's like your family, right? So you're supposed to,
Yeah.
and
I mean, like, it's like something becomes a burden, which
right,
sounds like bad, right? Like, you don't want
it
to say
does,
my
but yeah,
family's a burden, but,
or your job is right
or your
because
job's a
yeah,
burden,
yeah,
right? But, like, and I don't know, I think that ultimately I just hope down the road that, like, whatever I'm doing damage control on either my, like, career or my kids, that, like, somebody in the spectrum is going to be like, you know what, like you did it well and you did it fine, and like, or my kids are going to be like, wow, mom, I'm so proud of like all the things you've accomplished.
yeah.
Maybe they give a down the road. I don't
I
know,
don't,
right?
or
Like,
maybe they turn to crime.
or
I'm
yeah,
just
or if
kidding.
they become just tiny criminals. I do have one really strong-willed one, so you never know. She's either going to be a dictator or right, like
yeah, okay,
yeah,
or
so
just yeah, or
or
not
just
even the middle. She's
completely
not in
just
the
like
middle.
no,
She's
she's
the
either
okay.
here or there, right?
Well, that's good. That's ambition. Either way, it's
Yeah,
ambition. Just
yeah.
whatever the life choice she makes.
We joke all the time like there's like a fine line between like because I have two girls, right? So like the mom and the girl and the lady in me and the
Yeah,
officer in me is very like
the standard bearer.
like well also just like I want them to be confident in who they are as women,
Yeah,
and I want them to like not take shit from anyone and
that's
like
fair.
right and just and be individuals and stand up for themselves, but there's like a fine line we joke on like not letting them become right, like
Right.
how do you like teach that and coach that into your kids and like not break their spirits but also
You
like
can't because they're
yeah
like 7.
yeah
So
yeah, but like as we continue, right? Like eventually they're gonna be 13, right? Like,
eventually,
and then like then there's an expectation that
right.
like
It's hard to
um,
teach the context of yeah, because I say 7 because I have a 7-year-old and I'm going through the same struggles of how do I tell you to not take crap from your brother, but also like don't like punch him because he's punching you and he needs to learn, and he's 3, so I'm not asking to actually punch him, but also don't just like take the hits.
yeah, yeah,
So
it's like a weird
right,
game. But yeah, anyways, like between family, momming, the army, like I think ultimately I've just been really, it sounds like cheesy, but blessed with like good leaders, right? So like I was not prioritized.
I have actually a counterpoint to that.
Okay.
I don't think. Oh, you're right. You probably have had great leaders, and so I don't want to take that away from your comment. I think there's a huge misconception because I think you're a performer, and I think that you probably have shown the potential in your performance, right? And so when you do that, and I just mean, and I'm talking to you, so I'm saying you, but I mean officers across the board. Leaders don't want to be jerks to you because you have family things to take care of, but they want to be able to trust like that's what you're doing, and they want to be able to trust that like when you're here and you're going to be able to perform and you're going to be able to give me everything you got when you're here. So I'm okay with like, hey, my kid's sick and it's like we're in table 6 gunnery and I know you need me here, but I need to go, and they're like, okay, go. because I know you're going to go take care of that, and then I know when you come back, you're going to take care of us here, and and theoretically, you're gone, we're still taken care of because I know you did the work ahead of time.
Yeah.
And I think that, if I could be so candid to speak to your story, is where you fall in more so than anything else is. We trust you as an officer, so it doesn't matter what life comes at you. Like, yeah, there is probably a scenario that we can draw up that says, sorry, I can't send you home, and you're not going home, and that's probably NTC. But outside of that itself, it's kind of like, yeah, of course, like, we're going to let you go take care of yourself and your family because you've earned it.
Yeah.
And sadly, and I've experienced this, there's officers that haven't earned that because they don't show up and perform every day, or even senior NCOs, like you're not performing the way you think you are.
Yeah.
And so when you give us kind of this, like, and not to say we're not going to let you go home because we're going to, but we kind of look at it with squinty eyes and say, okay, is this real? Is it not? Because, like, I don't know if I can trust you as much as I trust other people.
You got your judgy pants on, then, Logan.
Well, I think it's more real than people want to say it is, and we just kind of we sugarcoat it to make us sound nice.
But, like, the unfortunate part of that is, like, not many leaders will have that candid conversation with you. Like, we're gonna do well. Oh yeah, fine, go home, and then behind the closed doors be like, Bridgeford, like, this guy
Right.
always has something, like, can't get his life squared away, like, blah, 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 right? But, like, my face-to-face with you is like, oh, yeah, go ahead, Logan, I understand, you got to take care of your family.
I do agree with you.
And
like,
I think that, like, we lack sometimes that candor of, like, hey, Logan, I'm really sorry that this is happening with your family right now. Like, maybe we need to look at some, like, leave options, give you the opportunity to, like, get back on track, because right now, like, you're not doing one or the other very well.
Yeah.
And, like, when you're here, you seem to be disconnected, right? Like,
we
don't do that. We're just like,
because what sort of organization are we in? We're in an organization that just doesn't. I'm not saying we don't care, because that's a huge overexaggeration, but we put the mission first because we have to, and so there's a culture that's developed, like, from years and years and years of doing this, and years of having to do that, and putting because we put our country first and we put our family second. As much as we say family first, mission always, or whatever the saying is, we kind of have to lean more on the side of completing the mission first, which comes at that sacrifice of the family. So I don't think you're wrong at all. I think you're 100% right. Like, that conversation should happen. We need to get better at counseling people, like, especially junior leaders, or even, like, senior NCO leadership, so that they know, like, what these expectations are.
yeah, so, like, let's talk about that, though, because, like, we don't do a great job, right? Like, and I'm one to, like, not do 100% of, like, great counseling on
like,
paper.
there should be a disclaimer. We are not the poster children of doing what we're preaching, but we still, I mean, it's still, like, knowledgeable. Like, we can still see what's going on.
I think that I prided myself on doing, like, the, like, authentic talk of, like, having that conversation of, like, you are sub-performance and you are not performing. And I think that... I feel like
you're talking to me right now.
No, what I've realized is, like, right, as a field grade, I think that it's a struggle, right? Like, and, like, I appreciate your kind words about, like, my performance is equal to this or whatever, but, like, I really believe that, like, I've had a lot of good luck in timing in my career, right?
It's part of it.
And, like, which has enabled me to have some of the great experiences I've had, and, like, continue to hopefully get to lieutenant colonel, right? But, like, I think that we don't do a good enough job, like, talking to lieutenants and captains, and I'm talking pretty specifically about the officer corps, to line them into, like, what it means to be a field grade officer. And, like, now that I've sat at this rank for 4 years, I think back to things that, like, I never was coached on or talked through on, like, what it actually being a major is, and, like, how to survive and thrive, like, ultimately, hopefully thrive. I think a lot of us feel like we're just surviving.
Just get me the next assignment brought in, I'll take a knee, which never happens.
No,
but
there's no knee. Like, because you're a high performer too, right? So, like, you're never taking a knee, Logan. Like, you may tell yourself
bad knees,
that.
so I can't.
No. So I just, like, I think that we fail sometimes as leaders to, like, actively engage with, like, younger officers on, like, hey, like, these things here right now have gotten you through, but, like, just so you know, as you continue to move through.
Well, let's be specific. Like, at least with one thing. Like, what is, because I'll share with you mine if you need a minute to think, but I have one that I share with like at the same thing, because I've gone through the same thing. It's been not 4 years, but 2 years at least in a job as a major.
Yeah.
And I kind of look back and I'm like, boy, this was like, you can't do this.
Yeah,
Like, you need
so
to be
like
able to
mine's a
develop.
little strategic. Like,
Okay.
so I do go to like the new AIM cycle system, right? Where like you're interviewing for jobs, like you want to go to like the sexy locations,
Yeah.
right? Like Jess Kitchell, right? I
Yeah,
interviewed
Fort
for
Riley was 1 through 4.
yeah, no. So I interviewed and like I was 1 for 1 with like Fort Carson, and I was like,
Ugh,
yes, right. So
Carson.
I was prepared to come out of CGSC and go to Fort Carson. And then family situation came up. Was like, hey, we gotta stay in Kansas, and I was like, no, no, no.
Like Leavenworth, Kansas?
Yeah,
Like,
like
no,
no.
further
Yeah, and it
west,
was like,
actually.
well, no, like the only place you can actually KD yourself would be a great place called Fort Riley, you know. And I was like, absolutely not.
Yeah, well.
And at like the end of the AIM site, like we're like toward the end, I'm like, there's no jobs available still. So I call, Fort Riley, and I'm like, hey, I'm looking at if there's any possible way you could get me to come to you versus Fort Carson right now.
Oh,
And
playing the system.
they
Got
were
it.
like, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
But then it was like my first indicator of like, oh, like that's not the example that I've had.
It's not the unit's fault. It's the location's fault, and it's not.
I would agree with that
And
assessment. Like people just don't love
and
like
it's the
Midland,
stereotypes
Kansas.
of.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
100%. So I was like, oh, okay, well, like that was a lot easier than I thought, right? So then orders changed. But like now, in hindsight, right, I've watched a lot of my like really high performing peers, right? Like I spent my entire career JBLM, Carson, back to JBLM, right? So I've been at probably 2 of the most like sought after locations as officers in the United States Army. And what I've learned is like everyone at those locations was pretty hyper competitive, right? So if I were to talk and coach like young lieutenants and captains going into like coming out of CGSC, maybe captains, I think that like you really got to look at where you go and understand that like you may be a top dog at a location like Fort Bliss, but like you put yourself in the pool of your peers at Fort Carson who now just basically brought in this top 10% of CGSC graduates to that location.
And
like
not because like it's all based on location. Like,
yeah,
it's not because
it's mountains.
4ID and Carson.
No.
Like,
it's just like it's got mountains.
Right,
like
right.
there's like mountains.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, you can like escape the the post and explore. Right, you got a good large international airport. Right, like. It's the vibe, right? It's not anything to do with 4ID.
Yeah.
Trust me, that's not why I was going there. It was like I want to go back to Colorado.
I want to ski just one time.
I'm like I like the mountains. I like to ski.
You can ski here in Fort Riley. You just have to go up. Shorter hills.
Well, actually, like really cool thing is like you can go from Fort Riley to Colorado in about 7 to 8 hours, and you can still hit the slopes, right? So like. But you don't think about that when you're like, oh, Fort Riley.
Because you think you're just gonna hit the beach all the time, go skiing all the time,
all
and really,
things.
Nope, you're gonna still do it like.
I think
like
that you
normal.
still try to find opportunities, right? And like we've done that here in Kansas as well. But like I think my coaching point back to that would be that like be strategic, like understand your talent and where you're at, and understand like what your expectation is of like where you go next and your career path, right? Like. If you really want to make your 20 years, then like you should really self-assess. Like, are you a guy that's going to pull an MQ across the top 10% of your year group at a competitive location like Fort Carson, or like would you be better served at a Fort Cavazos or Fort Bliss or Fort Riley or a Fort Stewart or some other location that's not as highly competitive, right? Because what I've seen is I had peers that were like, one of them, BZ to major, a couple others, part of that, like the merit-based, right, promotion stuff, and like they will not be lieutenant colonels in the United States Army because they did not pull MQs in their KD based on just like that top-tier talent.
I have 3 things. One, there's a huge jump between being a captain and being a major, even for those folks that were merit-based or BZ, and that some people just don't don't convert to. It's just
100%.
not. It's like a weird. It's like the Army figured out like you really need to be an
Yeah,
organizational
you
style
stay
leader.
the best company
And
commander
there are some,
ever.
and I even argue there are some jobs that when majors come into, and I'll pick on going to Division G3 as a major, you're still virtually kind of like a captain at the brigade level. If like that's where you were doing, you're just kind of the staff person, and you don't figure it out until you go down.
See,
And I'm not saying that's for everybody.
I disagree with that.
But I mean it from a perspective is that you can nug out and you can make your life suck for a while, but you won't be like if you did that same thing as like an XO or S3 at the battalion level, you won't survive. You need to figure out how to kind of delegate that and manage more. Before you disagree with me, which is great, that my second thing is, and I kind of explained this to my CGSE class, which is what you're talking about. Like all these places, like they're really competitive because a lot of people really want to go there, so they get a lot of the top talent. But what you don't know is that you're used to people having profiles. You're used to like your commanders like having all this room to take care of a lot of people. They may not have that anymore when you get there. And also you're getting rated against everybody. So it's like your 50% is not also the hundreds of captains or whatever that he did before. It's just you guys. And so like that 50% cut it might affect you, it might not, depending on the quality of officer that they were.
Or timing.
Right.
Luck.
Yeah. I'm not. Yeah. Those are things too. I'm just trying to speak to the general process. And then I forgot what my third thing was. But the important thing is the other two things that I brought up because they were the first two things I thought of.
No, I think I only disagree a little bit with your assessment of like being a major on division staff because I think that is ultimately where you will. It's determined whether or not you're going to be successful in a brigade, in a KD position. And I say that because like what I found is like the majors that take initiative and try to operate at a higher level on division staff and see themselves as somebody that like, because like divisions are run by
by us theoretically.
Right.
And I don't mean that from a perspective that there's not people out there that they should like India, and I 100% agree with you. You should be that 100%.
Yeah.
But there are folks that you can just get there and you can just like nug away on products. Like, hey, this is your planning effort. Okay,
Yeah.
I can sit there and I can do this and I can do this all by myself and I don't need anybody else. I can do all the planning, I can do all the products, and I can do all the coordination because I can, and that's what I'm used to.
Yeah.
Because that's what I had to do at a
You're
battalion.
saying like they're not good at delegating down and like managing people.
Yeah, they don't have the team to do that. And then when they go down, they try to do all those same things, and there's a huge leap that if they're not prepared, and most people really want to delegate the things down. They don't want to have to do all those things. So that transition may be tough at first, and then they realize that you have to lean on. And that's like the one thing I try to tell people is, if you have not figured out how to delegate, which sounds easy, but with some of the mentalities that we have in the Army, it's hard to do. I think it's hard to do for some people.
Well, I mean, it takes a lot of trust.
Yeah,
And
which.
We just talked about like people that are dropping their kids off or picking them up, and you know there's not a lot of trust in that like relationship that like you're doing the right thing at the right place at the right time and you're prioritizing correctly, right? Like, so yeah, it takes a lot of trust to be like, hey, I'm going to delegate this to you.
And
but I could also.
And then I forgot I told you that you can go to
Yeah,
your kid's play tonight, and I really needed like this thing was due
I
today.
needed it, yeah. But like I don't know, I think that goes back to like just like like we don't do a great job communicating. Like we just expect people to operate. And what I also have learned is like, I'm sure you see too, like our generation is not the same generation of company commanders like when we were company commanders, right?
Yeah.
Like, and
it's not that like the age gap is not it's just, but there's an interesting, you do kind of see that like interesting.
Yeah, it's like
gap of kind of
what I was like taught were like super important things that like I owned as like a commander in the United States Army. It was like, oh God, these are the things. Totally different scenario now.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'm like, what do these commanders do? Or like, like you're just like
they're working hard. We know they're working so hard.
But it's interesting. And what I think I also found is like I think sometimes we think we know what's important.
We do know what's important.
I feel great, and then we don't.
Yeah.
We're like you have to figure out what your boss you have to figure out what your boss's boss wants.
Yeah.
And then align to that, and then like understand their priorities, and like if you can't do that, and I think it's hard. It's really hard.
And that's
people.
even. Sorry, I feel like I keep cutting it because it's hard to then push that like to get that understanding down, because if you're just trying to figure it out, to be ahead of the game. Like now you got to get inexperienced lieutenants to
also understand
that, so that they know why they're doing something. Because like the why is so important, right?
It is.
And so if they don't know, in the end, like that's why there's that law. I think there's that huge loss in translation between like you as one of two field grade officers at a battalion, and then like the lieutenants that you're asking to run the battalion, right? So, and depending on how well you are at that, I'm sure you do. I'm sure she's super nice to everybody.
My baby exos, I'm not super nice to everybody here, but like those kids they make miracles happen.
Learning a lot, I'm sure, and making Bert's Knights battalion reputable.
I hope so. I think we're moving in the right direction.
Well, that's good. How was NTC? Especially for a very inexperienced battalion XO.
Yeah, maintenance culture,
it's a
thing. In an armor formation, man, whew, it eats to your lunch. So
I had to chat GPT what maintenance was when I got here.
It was a grind. Like it was hard. Like that aspect of it was hard. I think that overall NTC was like a great experience for me as a field grade officer, as a leader. I always like NTC. Every time I've been there,
right.
I think it's been like a pinnacle point, and I hope that this is another one that I get to look back on and decide it was also pinnacle. But yeah, maintenance, man, whew.
Yes,
struggle.
It's it's a real thing, and I think it's something that most people take for granted when they get here, especially if they've never been in a heavy unit. If you've been in a heavy unit, you kind of get it and understand it, so it's good. But as somebody who's only enjoyed the spoils of like a Carson and a Lewis, maybe you just don't fully understand
strikers and things. Yeah, it's not the same.
But we'll leave it at that for today. Hopefully, maybe get you back on before you free PCS out of here. Maybe not, because I feel like that we only scratched the surface with you today, Jess. So I really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thanks. Logan.